Okay, so we ran into an issue with whenever we clicked the edit entry button, it wouldn't pop up this form right here. And so and it would just give a JavaScript error just saying UCI error. And so we were trying to figure out what was causing that issue. And it was saying the flow name didn't exist. The first thing about it, but the project service time edit entry is not a quick create. It's actually a business process flow. You control the fields that are on that based on the steps that are in the business process flow. What it was complaining about in that error was that it didn't have the flow name, and this is the flow name right here. So this one's the time entry edit. And if you go to the time entry in the solution and click on controls, there's a control for each of those show as tabs, the read-only grid, counter grid, team entry grid. And in the team entry grid, there's all these properties that it sets. Right below is the cell edit task flow. And this wasn't populated in Levitt. Neither of these were populated, and so it didn't know which flow to actually call. I don't know how much they're using this in other solutions, or if we create our own controls, if we can kind of add in a piece that's similar to this. The way they have it is just a single line of text with the form, the business process name, and once that was populated, then that form correctly opened and we didn't have any more issues.
Do we know how they got the button control on that ribbon?
Not yet. The time entry ribbon, you can edit all the buttons here in this top section, but all the ones here you can't control through the ribbon workbench. Jury's still out on how to edit those buttons. And I guess one more item on this. If you add a field in the view that is like a related field, not an actual field on the entity, the JavaScript that handles like when you just try to add a time entry and it goes and just creates it, that JavaScript will fail because it's trying to call a field from a different form and it just says this doesn't exist. But it only fail on the JavaScript, so you can't see it until you open up the console log.
Smitty, since you're after hours now, I'll start with you. Maybe get you out of here earlier.
All right, well, the only one I've got is, and I did put it in the wiki, is adding a external URL to a sitemap in CRM. Just wanted to put a link over to SharePoint to some documentation, and they wanted it in the sitemap. And you go into sitemap and you can select an option to enter a URL, but if it's outside of CRM, you get a cross-domain error because SharePoint is in a different domain than CRM is. So I can show you how I resolve that, and it's also in the wiki. So.
Derek, anything new that you've learned this last month?
Something to be aware of is we found a way to generate reports from backend, from like .NET, C# code to just JavaScript. So
really?
It's much easier now to generate reports.
Like the reports form, like that's in the navigation today? Those kind of reports, the SSRS reports?
Yeah. If I fire before, we couldn't figure out how to do it from a plugin or anything, so we just did it in JavaScript, and that was kind of a pain. So we have a way to do it with plugins now, which is a lot better.
Mike?
So I came across a lovely bit when dealing with some Levitt partners' business rules. We had a business rule that was created using like 3 fields. One of them got removed from the form entirely, and that ended up breaking the entire business rule. So if you have a business rule that seems to not be working and it's activated, check to make sure that all the fields in the business rule show up on the form that you're using, and probably all the other forms as well. once I removed the missing field that was missing from the forms, I removed that from the business unit, then the business unit worked as expected.
Mac?
I guess one little thing that came up today, some other people might already know this, but I was trying to integrate contacts from BC back into CRM, and I was grouping by the contact ID, which I know is unique, but when I ran the integration, it was saying that there was like a duplicate found. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because I know this is unique. After a little bit of research, I found out it was due to duplicate detection rules in CRM. You can either turn off or disable the rule, or in my case, I just made sure that it was the email address in this case that you needed to be unique.
What I had been waiting for, but I didn't ever see the notice. But in data imports, so when you export to Excel and are using multiple option set, multi-select option set fields in that export, you can update multiple values on the import template if you go and get the item ID or the ID of that value in the option set, and then separate those with semicolons in the Excel cell for the import.
And
All
I
right.
think you'd get it to work with business rules, workflows, and BPFs. That'd be great.
Well, I think that might be maybe the next step, and maybe somebody's already working on like a utility that might be doing that. But if they've figured out how to do it that way to limit the value IDs, then maybe we're close. Cross your fingers.